Hello, I'm Tim and welcome to Gameplay Casts. In this video, I'm going to be taking on the Warhammer Plus model, Azrakh the Annihilator, and putting my spin on the World Eaters Terminator, all in time for Christmas. As with all my modelling projects, I start with a quick inspiration search to see what other people and creators have done to make the model in question stand out. For Azrakh though, there were some really cool ideas, but the only alternative to the box art in my eyes were the versions done in the original World Eaters, then known as Warhounds, colours of blue and white. Though in the end, I decided to stick with the box art colouring red, gold and green. I mean, it's December while I'm doing this, so literally the colours of Christmas. To make it my own, I decided I'd do a custom base with a pile of skulls, as well as some gore. I mean, skulls for the skull throne, right? Or maybe I could play with the Warpstone green around his head, and add some OSL to give a ghostly green glow. As I was planning to use contrast paints for the base coats, I primed the model in Chaos Black, and then added a pretty heavy zenithal in White Scar White over the top. Probably should have been a tad lighter with this, but I was doing the whole Leviathan box at the time and kinda got distracted. I base coated the skulls and my Space Marine helms for the base in black with a brush as I added these later. Once this was all done, I was ready to break out the Fleshtearers red contrast paint and get that lovely red base colour on. I then did the metal/silver parts in Leadbeltcher, and finally the armour trim and gun details in Retributor gold. After neatening things up and repairing any mistakes, the last thing I did was add a generous covering of Nulin oil over basically the whole model. I absolutely love this shade, and as well as covering the edges between the red base and the gold trim, it added depth and texture to the model, and to be honest, after it dried, the model looked fantastic. I could have, and probably should have, stopped there.
Heresy grows from idleness.
I did mess the model up slightly, but we'll come back to that later. It was at this time though that I realised my base needed a rethink. What if Azrakh was stood on some rocks in a kind of river or channel of blood, and the skulls were at the front partly submerged in blood? I liked the idea of this, and there were several YouTube videos on how best to do it. So I popped him off the base, added some cork rocks and a tiny amount of green stuff to hide the cracks. I then painted said rocks in dark grey and added a Nulin oil wash once they were dry. The last thing I did was add some Vallejo European mud over the rest of the base, and once it had dried, covered it all in a generous helping of Agrax Earthshade. The foundations of my base done, I then set to work creating my blood pool. But how? Well, I'd already bought some Yoo-hoo glue to mix with the Fleshtearers red and create some stringy gore. The problem was, it dried opaque. I needed something translucent to add depth. Now I could have homebrewed something using a mix of gloss varnish and red paint, but in the end, I just bit the bullet and bought the technical paint, Blood for the Blood God, from my local Warhammer store. Tamiya Clear Red was the alternative, but the shop had stock, so this method was cheaper and quicker than Amazon. Right, so my method. I basically added my gore as per the recommended method from the video on the screen now. Once that was dry, I added some more Fleshtearers red to the base to shade from below, and then applied a few millimeters of Yoo-hoo to the whole base. I dipped my spatula in water and used it to try and shape the glue to make it have some water-like ripples too. How successful this was, I don't know, a little bit maybe. When that was dry, I simply painted over it with Blood for the Blood God, and hey presto, one blood pool base. I would have liked it a tad more translucent, but I think I learned a fair amount from this application, and if I had to do it again, I'd just apply a thinner coat and probably skip painting beneath the glue. Still, it looks pretty bloody cool. Get it? Bloody? And just like that, my base concept was realised. All was well. I painted up the head using a mixture of Rakarth and Pallid witch flesh, combined with some purple and green shades, and a touch of Leadbeltcher for the metallics. Then came my clever idea to add some Guilliman's flesh to the gold in the shaded areas to add more shadow and depth. Well, best laid plans and all that. God, I wish I hadn't bothered. Basically, I was a bit slapdash in my application and touched the red paint in a few areas. This immediately created a horrible grey clouding over the nice red I had established. Equally, when I added shining gold as a highlight, I got a bit heavy-handed and in places lost the rich gold colour completely. This all meant I had to do a lot of base coat corrections. It took me a good 2 hours to re-establish the finish I already had previously. Also at the time, I'd been in and done some dry brushing to add my ghostly green glow OSL effect to his head. I immediately decided I didn't like this either and scrapped the idea, so I had to repair that too. All these backward steps left me pretty annoyed at myself, resulting in me abandoning the mini for the rest of the day. Of course it didn't. I took a few hours off and then was up till 2 AM, determinedly finishing this damn thing. Thankfully, it came out pretty bloody well. Bloody again, right? Corn, yeah. And look at that. A gift of festive snow from the Warp. I mean, it is nearly Christmas after all. I know there'll be those out there immediately saying, why didn't you add blood and gore to the Chain Fist? Well, believe me, I thought about it. But in the end, his nice clean-cut paint job looked so good, I didn't want to ruin it by covering the whole thing in blood splatters. As, if I'd gone down that road, there's no way you're cutting something with a Chain Fist and not spraying blood all over the shop. I'd like to think he either cleaned up to offer these skulls, or he's just teleported onto the battlefield. Anyway, I couldn't bring myself to do it after the repair work already undertaken. If I didn't like it or it went wrong, I wasn't repaying this guy for a third time. The finishing touches I applied to Azrakh were an Evil Sunz Scarlet edge highlight, as well as a few areas of blended highlights where I used watered down Fleshtearers to feather in the lighter Evil Sunz Scarlet. I also carefully added some more shining gold edge highlights and reapplied some Nulin oil all over the highlighted areas to help pull it all together. The last step was to apply matte varnish over the red parts of his armour and any bare skin, and then gloss varnish over the metallics and the gold armour trim. Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. Remember folks, a heretic is not just for Christmas. I've been Tim from Gameplay Casts, you've been awesome, and all that's left for me to say is peace out and thanks for watching.